Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today's block is called Tree of Life, and here is the block. Now this one has a lot of pieces in it, but they're mostly half square triangles, so it's a little bit complicated just because there's so many pieces and the way you have to put it together, but the techniques aren't difficult. It's just the half square triangles and some stitch and flip corners. So this is a 16-inch block, but it's not going to go in my quilt that has a combination of 16 and 8-inch blocks. This is going to be a Christmas project, and for this I'm going to be adding Blackford Beauty blocks to it. So it's going to be a lap quilt size or a wall hanging size, and it's going to have 5 piece blocks, and everything is going to be set on point. So this block is going to be sitting this direction. So I'll show you a EQ8 picture of that here so that you'll see what this is going to look like. But anyway, I wanted to go ahead and show you how to do this, and the techniques are going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be using triangle paper instead of the regular 2 at a time half square triangles. Anyway, I hope you'll stay with me, and I'll show you how to make the Tree of Life block. Okay, I'm going to show you the Tree of Life block a little bit closer. This one is made all with Lori Holt fabric from various different lines, and the most complicated part of this block is the trunk down here, this section here. This is a 4-patch block. There's just 4 sections to it, 4 quadrants. And this one was the hardest one for me to figure out, and I was trying to make it so that I didn't waste a lot of fabric. Problem is, it left biased edges here. So I went back to the drawing board and redid it. So the instructions are going to show you how to make it so that you have straight of grain on these sides. And it's going to look like you're wasting fabric. You're going to have large pieces that are big enough to save to use for something else. So it's not really wasted fabric at all. But move this a little bit more, but you can see this is one section. This is one section, and then you've got 2 sections here. So we're going to work on each one individually and then put the 4 together, and then you'll have the Tree of Life block. Now there's lots of different Tree of Life block patterns. They're all a little bit different, but this is the one that I chose to go into my quilt. And my quilt is going to have several Blackford's Beauty blocks, and it's going to have 4 of these, and this whole quilt is going to be on point. So I'll have a Christmas quilt with 5 blocks, and I think it'll look really nice. So let's get back to the Tree of Life block, and I'll show you what I'm doing with this, because instead of doing my half square triangles individually, I'm going to use triangle paper. Now the instructions are written to do these individually so that you don't have to feel like you've got to go out and buy the triangle paper, because you don't. Using it will make it go faster and be more accurate, but you certainly don't have to use it to make this block. Okay, here are the fabrics, the way I have them cut. For A is you'll need 1 4 7/8 inch square. For B, you need 14 3-inch squares, and the B fabrics are the green. They're just like this, and I've got them here. They're going to be matched up with F fabrics and J fabrics. So I've got all of these. These are the B and J fabrics. These are the B and F fabrics, and they're all ready to sew. So D is 1 8.5 inch square, and then E is 1 4 7/8 inch square. F would be 4 3-inch F would be 4 3-inch squares, which is in here. G is 6. We have G. G is 2 6 and 5/8 inch squares. Those are down here. See if I can move that so you can see it better. Here we go. Okay. G is 2, 6, and 5/8 inch squares. H is 2 2.5 by 8.5 inch rectangles. I is 2 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles. J is 10 3-inch squares, and those are in here. And then K is 4 2.5 inch squares. So a lot of pieces, and I'm going to have a lot of half square triangles, but the time you take to make this quilt is going to be worth it. Okay, I'm going to start by making the trunk unit first, and for that we need A and E squares and the G and the D square. So the D square is the great big one. We're going to start with that one and the 2 G squares. So I'm going to take my markers off, and it's best to draw a diagonal line on the wrong side of the G squares. So I'm going to get a ruler and a pencil and draw those diagonal lines. And we're just going to do the sew and flip method, or easy corner triangles. There's lots of names for those. So use whatever kind of marker you want, as long as it doesn't bleed through your fabric. So you want to make sure you don't have like a Sharpie or something. You don't want to use that, because that will bleed through your fabric and it's permanent and it is not going to come out. So I'm just using number 2 pencil. Okay, so for this we're going to sew each square on opposite sides. So I'm going to line these up, raw edges even, and I'm going to pin in a couple of places so that it won't shift. Now if your square comes out a little bit too large, that's okay, you can trim it down. But I think this will come out just about at the right size. Okay, I'm going to sew right on that drawn line. And at the moment I don't have my 1/4 inch foot on, but it's not needed right here. Okay, got to trim this off. Let me put a scrap under here. And then I'm going to remove my pins. And then I need to cut a 1/4 inch away from the drawn line. Now you can use your rotary cutter. I'm going to use a pair of scissors. Since this is seam allowance, it doesn't have to be exact. So I'm just going to eyeball this. Okay, so it leaves you some big pieces, but these are usable. You can go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch away from that edge you cut, and then you have another half square triangle that you can use in another project. I'm going to set mine aside, and I'm going to press this square back, this triangle back. Okay, so here we have that part, and we'll do the same to the opposite corner with the other G square. Just line up all those raw edges and pin. I'm going to put a couple extra pins in this one. Okay, and let's sew on this line. Okay, remove the pins, and then I'm going to trim and press. Okay, so here, this is the tree trunk. If you want your tree trunk a little bit more narrow, you'll need to use a larger size G-square. If you want it wider, you use a smaller one. That's all you need to do. Now we need to make the top and the bottom. So let's get the A square and the E square. And the E square will be kind of the top of the block. It's the part that's going to go up towards the leaves. The green part is going to go at the bottom. So decide which is your top and your bottom. You're going to also need to draw a diagonal line on these squares. So if you have directional fabric, you want to take that into consideration. If you're having trouble with your piecing to come out exact, like this needs to be an 8.5 inch square when you're done with all the sewing, you might want to try a scant 1/4 inch seam, or just draw so just slightly to the right side of your drawn line. It'll make your block a little bit larger, and then you can trim it down from there if you need to. I'm so used to lifting up my presser foot when I'm putting on my leaders and enders. Don't really need to with this foot though. Okay, I'm going to trim that edge off. So I've got these pieces. I'm going to press this back. Okay, so there is, well, this will be the top part of the block. And then we're going to do the same with the A square. So I need to draw a diagonal line on the wrong side of this one. So draw the diagonal line. And then line up my raw edges and pin, and then sew on that drawn line. Okay. Okay. Now remove pins and press, trim. Remove the pins, then trim. I'm going to set those fabrics aside too. Anyway, here is that piece. So it is all done. And we can move on to making half square triangles. Okay, I'm going to make my B and F squares first. That's the brown fabric with the green. So I'm using my triangle paper. I'm going to shorten my stitch length, and I'm going to sew on the dotted lines on my paper. Okay. Feel like I got everything here. Okay, so everything is sewn, and I'm going to trim these and press, and I'll have all my half square triangles. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is to make the upper left hand quadrant. So it's this section right here. In the directions, I'm showing you row by row how to lay it out so that you get all the sections correct. So we're going to go ahead and follow those directions. Okay, for the first row, you're going to need a C square and a K square. I want to take one of each of these. And then you'll need one of the half square triangles with the trunk and a green, and then a green with a background. So we're going to do the C square first, and then the trunk piece, the background, and then the K square, which is also a background. So this is row 1. Okay, for row 2, and let's see, a C square here, and another brown and green, and then we need a green and a background. Okay, let me double check and make sure I got everything facing correct. That looks right. And then that's row 2, row 3. And then row 4. Okay, so that is all the first unit. So you couldn't see all that, could you? Okay, so I have all of the rows laid out. This is row 1 of the upper left-hand unit quadrant here. So row 1, row 2, row 3, and row 4. So lay all your pieces out before you sew them together. If you have directional fabric like I do, you may want to switch some of the pieces so that they're not upside down. Like we can do this and that. And with these two pieces, maybe we'll switch those. In actuality, this bird is kind of sideways, but that's not going to matter. So that looks good to me. You can move any of these pieces, you know, switch them if you want. But you can see here is the trunk. The brown is the trunk of the tree coming up at the top of the tree. So the big trunk piece is down over here, and this is the continuation of it. So we're going to sew all of these into rows, then we'll sew all those rows together, and that unit will be done. And then we'll move on to the upper right hand quadrant. Okay, I've switched over to my 1/4 inch presser foot. I was asked on a comment as to what presser foot this is. This is a Singer presser foot for short shank machine. This is a modern foot, and you can get it at Joann's. Shorten or lengthen my stitch length here. And I'm doing one row at a time so that I don't get pieces mixed up. Okay, now I'm going to sew these rows together. So we'll have this quadrant done. Now these rows, if you need to number them, do that, because they're real easy to get flipped around. I had several times when I thought I was sewing on row 3 when I was actually sewing row 2, and I was getting myself all confused because I thought I had things backwards, but I didn't. And if I had labeled them, I would have known. Okay, so there's the whole unit. I'm going to, actually it goes this way. I'm going to press this one, set it aside, and then we'll work on another section. Okay, we're going to work on the upper right-hand quadrant, which is right here. This is the quadrant we just finished. Now we're going to do this one here. So you see all of the half square triangles we need. We only need one brown and green one, the rest of the green and white, and then we need 2 of the background pieces. So we're going to, row 1 is an H rectangle. We have 2 of these, so I'm going to take one, and here's row 1. Okay, row 2, 2 of the green and the white, half square triangles, and a K-square. So the next 2 rows are just going to be three squares. Okay, and then we need 3 half square triangles here. Okay. And then row 4 will be the one with the brown, and then we have that. So what we need to do first is to sew these 2 rows together, sew the units together, and then sew them together. And then we're going to sew an I rectangle to the end of that. Okay, then we'll sew this row all together, and then we can sew all of these together into rows. Okay, here's rows 2 and 3. Now I'm going to sew row 4 together, and then we can sew all 4 rows to each other. Okay, the next one is the left lower hand quadrant. That's this one right here. So we're gonna lay out all the pieces for this one and sew it together, and then we'll sew all 4 quadrants together. So on this one, row 1, once again, this is going to be 3 pieces in the row. So we have, let's see, we're going to have 2 of the green and white ones, and then a brown one is going to go next to it. The next row is 3 green and whites, and then row 3 is going to be the last K square, and then 2 greens, green and whites, and then we'll have the last I square or I rectangle, and then the last green and white square, and then the H rectangle will go on, actually it's going to go on this side. So this is pretty much the same layout as the quadrant we just did. It's just all in reverse. It's mirror imaged. So we're going to go ahead and sew all of these 3 rows, these 2 pieces, sew them together, and then sew on the H rectangle. Okay, row 3. So now we need to press all of those and then sew the H rectangle, sew them together, then sew the H rectangle to them. Okay, now we have all 4 quadrants, and we need to put those together. So we're going to just start with the tree unit. This is the trunk, this is the grass down here. So we're going to put that one down. And then we have the top of the tree. Which will go here. And then we have the right upper quadrant and then the left lower quadrant. So we put all of those pieces together and you have the tree. So let me turn it so you can see it. I did it all so that I could make sure I had it correct. But here we go. So here is the tree of life, and that's about as good as I can get. I can't quite get it all in the screen, but this is a 16-inch block. So you can see I used a different background here than I did in the rest of the block, and that's just because I'm using scraps from my stash. So you can mix and match however you want. So I'm going to sew these in rows, then sew the 2 rows together, and then the block will be done. Okay, I'm going to pin seams together, and I have all the seams pressed in opposite directions so that they will nest You can also press all your seams open if you want. I got it right. Okay, here's the Tree of Life block. So this is the one I just finished. I like the multicolored print for the green, the one that has some brown and red in it. I think it kind of lightens it up, brightens it up a little bit, makes it kind of sparkle. And then here's the sample one I made, which is still pretty, but just a different look. So, you know, use whatever fabrics you like and make your Tree of Life block. So also you can see the difference where this tree trunk is wider than this one. I actually kind of like the narrower trunk, but this is kind of how it worked. This one does look fine. It all lines up here, whereas on this one the trunk is a little bit narrower. It doesn't quite line up here. It's just a little bit short. So this one was my trial block, and as I said, this unit I struggled with. I don't like the biased edge, and things did not line up the way I wanted them to. So it's not exactly a failure, but it's not the best. And this one is quite a bit better. Now, one thing with all of these half square triangles, the more seams you have, the more your piece is going to shrink up. So if you can use triangle paper or cut these as 3-inch squares and then trim them down after you sew them, you'll probably get a better result. And you can see in places like here, I am off. I don't have my points missing or meeting. My points are not they're not missing, they're not meeting here. There's background between the points. So those two areas are the ones that stand out to me. The rest look good. It's just those two areas here that could use some extra work. But I think this is fine. I'm not going to take it apart and redo it. But if I was making this block with outside of a tutorial, I would work harder to match my points, which, you know, I could do. I could rip this out and redo it, but at this point I really don't want to. So it's going to stay this way at least for a while, and then it's going to be set in the center of the quilt, and these Bradford's Beauty blocks are going to go with it. They're going to surround it. So we're going to have a Christmas Tree of Life quilt. That's what this is going to be called. So everything's going to be set on point. So we'll have setting triangles and corner triangles and then borders. So it'll be a nice quilt. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Okay, that is it for the Tree of Life block. Here is the one that I made in the tutorial. So I like the print, I think, in this one, and don't even know where I got this piece of fabric. I'm thinking I probably got it at Joann's, but I don't know for certain. I've had it for quite a while, so it could have come from anywhere. But anyway, this is all made out of scraps from the fabrics that I have here at the house. So it went together pretty good. I mean, you have to watch what you're doing, and you may need to rip and redo a couple of times in a few areas, like I know I did. So it's but it's not too bad. Just take your time with this one. Watch your orientation, which is usually what gets me in trouble. I get something turned the wrong direction. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please click that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And click that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next video comes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.